I'm joined now by someone who had a long association with Joan Hickson's Miss Marple, working on 5 of the stories, including the very final one that Joan did. So I'd like to introduce costume designer Judy Pepperdine. How are you?
Hello, Alex. Well, thank you.
Good. And it looks like you're very busy at your end. It's a fantastic workshop space there.
This is my son's workroom. Can you see it? Oh, yes. He works up here, and his hobby is model airplanes. I don't know whether you can see them. He flies. So that's why I'm on his computer, because I don't have one.
Right. So the creative streak continues in the family then.
Very much so, yes.
Well, I wanted to take you back to 1985 when you first came to contact with Joan Hickson's Miss Marple. At the time, you'd been a designer for quite a while by that point. Was Miss Marple quite an exciting job to be going on to?
Well, exciting in that there was you always got a terrific team of actors and always lovely locations, and it was well known to be a really happy bunch of people, and it certainly proved to be so for years. It was a delightful, wonderful job to do.
And by this point, so you came on for the 4th of the stories. It was already an established success. So was it quite a prestigious show to work on at the BBC?
Yes, definitely. And you were very pleased to have that as a show, definitely.
Oh, fantastic! And how aware were you of Agatha Christie's work beforehand? Were you coming to some of the stories totally fresh to it?
Yes, I don't think I had ever read Agatha Christie. My father did on holiday a lot. I remember that, but I don't think I had ever read Agatha Christie. But I love a good murder story. So, and as I said, the sun always shone in St Mary Mead. There were wonderful summers and a wonderful world to live in. Lovely classic cars, and lovely hot summers in vicarage gardens, and baits and cream teas, and no lack of domestic help. It was just a wonderful. And the clothes were divine. It was lovely summer shirtwaisters, like Horace's dresses, and the men's tailoring. Not to forget the chaps. They were all very interesting, and it was nice to do some men's characters. They were always great characters.
So is that period setting, is that a particularly interesting time to design? Because I imagine some eras are more visually interesting than others.
Well, it was very stylish time, for the ladies who had evolved. But it was also so quintessentially English. That was the joy of it. Simple shirt waists, the clinched waists, the lovely shoes and handbags and hats. Everybody wore hats and gloves. And it was a very elegant era for her friends like Dolly, played by Gwen Rockford. They were such ladies. They moved beautifully, they spoke beautifully, unlike today's actresses who are a bit extra English and lazy vowels, and they clomp around. They don't know how to move because they're not taught how to. But the actresses were of a certain age in this matter that they'd been through a really good training, and all they naturally were very elegant ladies. They wore clothes so well. They knew what to do with a handbag and how to sit down, how to finger their pearls, how to wear a hat. It's all, they just did it naturally because they were used to it, because they probably were young in that era, and so many of them are sadly gone from us, but we can all watch the videos and remember it.
So when you've got, because every story has a wonderfully established cast, when you're told, one part is to be played by such and such, where does your creative process begin? Do you start with the script and then talk to the actor about ideas, or do you talk to the makeup designer? How does your process start?
Well, usually from, by that time you've obviously probably got a huge reference of the period, books, photographs, drawings, and you speak to the actor on the phone, usually meet at the costumiers with if they're having stuff made, you get the tailors or the dressmakers in to meet them, and try on shapes to start with, because every figure is different, and trying to get the character and the shape established, and then it kind of just evolves from that really. And I've obviously looked at a wardrobe for them from stock stuff, which we delve into and put all of it, but find out what works and what doesn't. For the particular, and also very often had to make doubles for murders. Of course, we mustn't forget the murders and the blood. I remember once one girl got murdered in a dress, and I had 3 made the same. And I thought, well, I'll get the first one cleaned after the murder. There wasn't a lot of blood on it. I took it to the cleaners. I went to collect it a week later, and there was a little note pinned to it with a safety pin written in pencil. It said, "Best result in the time given." They obviously couldn't get all the blood out, but I didn't like the useful, could use it again as a pinch. But yes, lots of doubles made for the murders.
Yes, I suppose that is part of the nature of the show. But one look that I suppose you particularly inherited was Joan Hickson's look that was already quite established by that point. To what extent are you able to make it your own? Or because of course, Joan Wright had originated it 3 stories before.
No, I didn't make it my own. It was, as you say, it was established look. The only thing we did was add to it as the story dictated. So I did one where Joan went to the first night in the theatre. I forgot which that was. I know we shot it in Bath at the theatre there. And she didn't have a suitable theatre dress, that was seeming, because her thing was quite comfy and simple. So I did a couple of dresses for evening wear. And when she went up to London to stay with her nephew, and but hotel, we just added things that were a bit more town-like and less country-like. So it was just adding into her. And then I inherited things from Brian Willis, which he'd done for her. Or, so we all added a bit, but I wouldn't say we didn't change the look of the set in any way at all. She had her little shoes and the grey skirt suit. And Jan did a very good job.
Because looking at the Marples that you worked on and Brian as well, you sort of did every other one. Was that quite a common way to work, or was it more that you would have, in an ideal world, worked on all of them to give you that continuity?
I think nowadays, because television so fast now, you'd have, which I think they do on they have one designer who doesn't go on location, and you have a wardrobe staff that go on location, and you do all of them, because you spend your life digging out stuff in the costumes, which is, I prefer the older style of filming where you went on vacation and I was there every day, and that doesn't happen now. So the way that it was done, I think we did 2 a year, and Brian would do one, and I would do the other. While he was filming, I was prepping. So Joan would go straight from one to the other, so she'd do a flat out, probably 16 weeks of filming. And that would be it for the summer. I think she did just 2 a year, if I remember rightly. But, for somebody who was over 80, I think when she did Bertram, always weren't perfect, always, and, early starts every morning, she was just incredible. And so popular. We filmed down, I remember, in Bloody Salted by the sea for a whole really hot summer. And the crowds who were holidaymakers were enormous. Just to see Joan, she'd come out of her little caravan. No, she'd never caravan. She'd come out of a car, and she would say, "Who are all these people?" She couldn't believe that they were there to see her. She was so sweet that way. And I was there when she actually said "more tea, Vicar." She ad-libbed, I think that might have been the last one. We were in a vicarage garden, and the vicar was at the table, and she just couldn't help herself saying, "More tea, Vicar."
So obviously at the time, these were a success at the time as you were making them, not just retrospectively. Was there a quite a buzz on set that this was a special production to be on? It wasn't just another job.
We knew it was, far as I was concerned, it wasn't because of the viewing figures. That probably George would be very interested in those, but I can't really explain it. We just loved doing it, and it was. I can't really explain it. I wasn't thinking, oh, this is going to be a smash hit, because it doesn't matter to me whether it is or it isn't. If I enjoy the job, it doesn't matter if it doesn't take well, except for it was nice to know you perhaps are doing one next year.
Of course, yeah. And each of the stories were effectively, a small film. So were you given the sort of pre-production time to reflect that? Because I know at some points, in particularly in the 80s, prep time was very little.
Oh no, it was generous. That time was generous for the BBC. I can't speak for outside at the time, but compared with what the kids have to do nowadays, you don't get casting till the day before. You good luck now. When we did Marple, you would have the complete script finished 8 weeks, maybe 8 weeks before you started. You had a filming schedule that even had like the dog handler on the last day of filming down. Nowadays you just get you get a daily sheet, don't you? That they work out the night before. It's scramble. But those days it was, good old BBC properly worked out and organised. You knew where you were going to be, every day of the filming for an 8-week shoot.
Yeah, a little bit different to how things are done these days. But,
well, no mobile phones, so you couldn't organise a band to do pickups from the location. I remember the first mobile phone on the case was enormous. It was the size of a suitcase, and it was in the back of the production manager's car, and you could book a phone call if it was really desperate. Or you got a lift down the mountain to a village, to a red phone box, to ring back to London to organise a lorry to come and pick up costumes and take them back, so you didn't have to pay for them another week. So communications were very much like a little group of people on an island, with no communication outside your immediate film crew, really, because there wasn't much communication.
Of course, and whilst a lot of the crew remained the same, or there wasn't a great deal of change, the directors for each story were very different. Would they often come in with a very different style? People like Guy Slater, Martin Friend, John Davis. How were some of those to work with?
I worked with all of those, and not Norman Stone. Well, they seem to. Norman might have been a bit maverick, but the others were more of the age and style that was just right for Marple at the time. They were gentle directors, very gentle with Joan, and they cast very, very well, and they were calm. I never heard anybody shout except Norman. That's Norman. And it was very, very civilized job.
So do you think part of it was finding the crew to suit the job? Because, as you say, it's a wonderful English, view of the English countryside, and to have a crew that sort of reflects that in some ways.
Well, I think it happened by osmosis. I think, the respect for Joan, get cheery now, but camera crew, people setting up dollies, not so much men, but prop men, they all adored her, and so it caused a really family atmosphere. So the crew wasn't handpicked by George, maybe the HODs were, but the crew's a crew, but they all seemed to be of the same kind of nature, couldn't do enough for Joan.
And is there, one particular Marple story that stands out for you? I don't know whether it might be a particularly complicated one or most enjoyable.
They were all nice in their different ways. I loved Digging Murder because we were down at Bloody Salt and by the sea, and it was, we had cricket matches, cricket matches and funny things. hotel was different. That was in London. We filmed in the Ladies' University of Grosvenor Square. That was different. We just went to such nice places. Norfolk, Devon. Yeah, there wasn't one.
And I suppose one of the challenges, particularly in Bertram's Hotel, was that not only were you recreating the period, but recreating London at the time, which I suppose of all places perhaps had the most sort of recognisable change in the various eras. Was that a particularly challenging one to work on, to dress supporting artists as well as regulars?
No, it wasn't more challenging. It was different because we had like Americans staying at the hotel and more other interesting characters to do it in the background of people. But my main worry on that was that we lost one of the principal's overcoats, who was the detective played by George. No longer with us. He had a very distinctive green load overcoat. He came through the swing doors, like in the Gardner Hotel, through the swing doors of the Bertram Hotel, wearing this coat. And then we did the reverse 3 weeks later. Couldn't find his coat. And there's no way we could fake it. It couldn't suddenly be taking off. Well, I suppose if we got something similar, he could have been taking it off and having it over his arm. So you wouldn't have it. It would be very much of a fuss. And we searched, they rang around the costumery, they couldn't find another one like it. And in the end, on the day we were filming this reverse shot, I had to go to production and tell my coat. And as I was on my way in, a prop man stopped me and said, "Hey, Jude, we picked up some clothes that were left at the location on the night filming. Do you want to come and get them? They're in my van." And I went there, and there was the coat. So to be left hanging on the railings in Grosvenor Square overnight, and the chaps from the prop department picked them up. That was a narrow squeak.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm glad you managed to find it in the nick of time, though. But I was curious, how had the production changed from the first one you did to Mirror Crack from Side to Side? Because, not only had you been working on it for almost 10 years, but I imagine that they must have sort of pushed what the series could do by the end of it to be more ambitious.
You'd have to speak to George about that. I think there was ambition from the start. I don't think they changed in their ambition or the way the stories were told. I think the standard was there from the very beginning. I don't think it changed or dropped. I mean, one always worries, perhaps if you're a producer, that standards would drop after complacency and success, and and it starts to be that you're churning them out because they're a success. But that certainly never happened in Marple because there weren't too many. It wasn't like I don't know how many episodes got all in all, but like 40 towers, quality in, and then stop. And so it didn't get a chance to go downhill or have less production values.
And of course, it was a series that you would keep coming back to amongst other jobs. So was it quite nice to, if you're doing, I don't know, something like EastEnders or something that it's totally different, but know that you're going to go back to that wonderful world of Marple? That must have been quite nice.
I managed to avoid EastEnders apart from one tiny block. We always thought it was the punishment block in the self-defense to Elstree from EastEnders. Well, I'm on the whole being pretty fortunate. It was definitely something to look forward to doing. Not all jobs are wonderful, for one reason or another. But I would say it was a treat, and I look forward to it, and hope that it would go on.
So is it perhaps one of the sort of standout jobs you did at the BBC? Is it one that you look back on with particular fondness?
Most definitely, yes.
And I always think Joan Hickson's Marple, or that incarnation of it, is seen as sort of the definitive one. It's very faithful to the books, but also of her portrayal. What is it you think makes it such a still definitive version today?
Well, it's Joan's intelligence. you know, and what's going on behind our eyes. And, you know, I feel some of the others were mentioned are a little caricaturish. Joan was truthful in everything that she did. Was never a silly caricature or a stupid old woman. You know, she was just absolutely marvelous. Absolutely the best Marple ever.
And having done, you know, because it was quite a lavish period piece, did that particularly prepare you well for other productions on that scale, or was it just, you know, one of many?
I certainly learned a lot by doing it. I went on to do other things, a couple of period films, this is out of the way of things, and certainly you ended up with being confident because you had not done exactly the same before, but you know, you know you could do crowd without worrying about it because you've done it before. And yes, I would say I learned a lot.
I suppose we should also say that makeup designers you worked alongside, Sheila Wells, Suzanne Jansen, Sylvia Thornton, were across many of them with you. Did that mean that you immediately had that sort of creative shorthand and knew how each other worked? That must have been quite an advantage.
Yes, especially where hats are concerned, you know, because all the ladies wore hats, and you don't want to. You want to work with makeup and hair so that you know they're happy with the hats that you're supplying and that they look good and they're not hiding too much face for the cameraman. They don't make shadows from hat rims and things. But on the whole, we didn't interfere with each other's department at all. I can't remember any nasty makeup wars. No, it was all worked together very well.
And you touched upon working with Joan, and you know, I think the series was very much a success partly because of her. Can you remember when you first encountered her? Was she immediately someone that was going to be easy to work with?
I can't remember when I first met Joan. Obviously, I had huge respect for her. I was not nervous, but you know, I just didn't want to bother her when she didn't need to bother, you know. But I was always there, you know, nice chats, and I can't remember. Sorry, I forgot what you asked me there about Joan. Was I nervous when I met her? Or?
That first encounter with her, because of course she'd had such a career and already done some of the Marples. Do you remember when you first met her?
No, I don't. Sorry, I can't remember that. It was not seeing us on the 6th. What was it called? That was the first one I did.
Pocket full of
I
rye.
can't remember a thing. Got a blank. What was the first one I did, Alex?
A pocket full of rye.
A pocket full of rye. Yes, up in Norfolk. Oh, I can't remember. Sorry, darling, it was so long ago. What did we say? It's 38 years ago, if not more. So,
Yeah, going back a little bit, but right. Certainly.
A whole lifetime.
Well, I think they certainly all stand up wonderfully well today, and as I say, are still loved by many. So I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time, Judy. You know, your contribution to the series is absolutely fantastic. So thank you for your time to talk a little bit about some of your time on it.
Pleasure, thank you.